Welcome to the Redeemed Vision podcast, where we bring sight to the blind and freedom to those enslaved by our pornified culture. Here, we dive into hard but important topics such as pornography, sexual identity, true freedom, real love, and living marriage well. Go deep with us as we uncover what redeemed vision means for each of us living in the world today. Come to know yourself, the power of redemption through Jesus Christ, the joy of laughter, and how to live in gratitude and wonder. This is Redeemed Vision.
Welcome to another edition of the Redeemed Vision podcast. I am your host, Steve Pokorny. I'm the founder of Freedom Coaching. We can be found at freedom-coaching.net, where we are bringing the blind sight that we are breaking out, those who are enchained by pornography and unchaste behavior. It's an honor to have you here. Just as a reminder, one of our sponsors for this podcast and this work is Hallow. It's the #1 app for Catholic meditation and prayer. I encourage you to download app to find peace that the world just cannot give, to sleep better, to pray more, to deepen your relationship with God. I think you're going to find a wealth of value there. If you go to hallow.com/freedom coaching, where you download the app, and then you can enter in where you found out about this, which is through Freedom Coaching. You're going to get 3 months free. And then once you continue with that work, you're going to continue to provide for this work in getting the word out that's happening here. Second, I encourage you also to like, to subscribe, to ring the bell, and to share this very important work in getting this out to the world. And also, if it's on your heart to donate to the work we're doing, our Freedom Coaching Foundation Incorporated allows for nonprofit donations to come in, and this allows us to provide for scholarships for those who are in need of it, and also to help to provide content like what you're listening to here and on our other podcasts, as well as to help get the message out in this most important work. So with that said, since we last met, there was a very important documentary that was released to streaming platforms. It originally came out in November. I was heading on to a healing retreat, so I was not able to go and visit to see it in theaters. It's now been released, and it's called It's Happening Right Here. And I encourage you, wherever you're at, just jot down that information. And after this podcast, go check it out. It's a minimal fee for it for a rental, or even you can purchase it. And it really goes and digs deep into the trafficking industry and the fact that this is happening all over the place. And especially the focus is on the US market. And that's happening in very luxurious places that are very well off. This is going on here. They filmed most of it in 2020 and 2021, and allows to basically, it rips the mask off this facade. And for anyone, especially those who have children, this is something you're going to want to key in on this, because it's been said that the technological advancements that we've had have been pushed forward because of the pornography industry. And that industry is not interested in mere fun and games, but it's interested in enslavement. And in many cases, it's a literal enslavement. They've said that the market, especially for children, some of the stats I've read, is 8 million children per year, right? These disappearing children, things like that. Those announcements you sometimes find on your phone that come up. This is something that is to be aware of. And the organization behind this is Operation Underground Railroad. You sometimes see it on my blazer. It's one of the organizations that I support, that we at Freedom Coaching are very friendly toward. And again, part of our work is to help to prevent those people from ever getting in there, because again, these desires, as we're going to get deep into in this podcast, those desires they start innocently, but it's not enough, and we need something more and more and more. So I encourage you, please check it out, support the work they're doing at Operation Underground Railroad, because they are making a difference, and you'll see some of those stories that are highlighted in that documentary. Again, it's called It's Happening Right Here. And I think you will be profoundly impacted as I've been impacted. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you a very special guest, a woman who has become a dear friend of mine, a colleague in this field. Her name is Claudia Perez, and we like to say Claudia was exposed to pornography very early, and this made her vulnerable to sexual abuse and to compulsions. This led to overachievement as a coping mechanism, and this eventually developed severe anxiety and a depression disorder. So she went through a process of healing, of integration of her own wounds, and finding herself, and has led her to 20 plus years of work in healing families, teens, and young adults to find meaning and order in their sexuality. And Claudia has years of work in this field, and I encourage you to look at her full bio wherever that you are listening to this podcast. Claudia lives in northern Mexico with her husband of 28 years and 5 children. So without further ado, Claudia Perez, welcome to the Redeem Vision podcast.
Thank you. We actually just celebrated our 29th anniversary. So
awesome. Congratulations. Very, very, very exciting. Did you, how'd you celebrate?
We went to mass with our children, and then we went and had, we didn't go to dinner. We went for here in Mexico, our strong meal is at noon. So we went to eat to a very nice restaurant by ourselves. Very important. The rest of the day with our children, just like laying down and watching movies and just enjoying what the gifts we've received through our marriage.
Wonderful. Congratulations on that, Claudia. And what I'd like to do, obviously, for our conversation is to help people to get to know you. And I thank you for getting vulnerable to be willing to share this. And then we'll get into more of the work that you've done. But so can you take us back to growing up, right? How would you describe your home life growing up?
Well, as parents, we do the best we can. Nevertheless, I grew up feeling very lonely, very confused all the time, whether I was a good girl or not, whether I was loved or not. I actually thought I wasn't. I didn't deserve love. I was undeserving of love. So I kind of always wanted to be just the perfect little girl, perfect grades, perfectly behaved, just always trying to earn the love that I so much wanted. I think that sums it up. Very anxious and just doubting whether I actually belonged in my family or not. I think that's
Yeah, and obviously that's a very tough place to be in, and I think as anyone who has experienced anything like that, the being is to really question one's identity, right? Who am I? And as you know well, or are entering into, and then by the way, that's the other important I forgot to mention for all those who are hearing this. Claudia very recently, in the past 6 months, has joined the Freedom Coaching team as our female coach. On our team, yes, she is bilingual, coming from Mexico here. Her English is way better than my Spanish, so we'll leave it at that. Right. So soy gringo. And from here, right, as we've experienced, and I think we see this with so many of our clients, that when they don't know who they are, when the foundations of our life gets kind of perceived or in real torn asunder, we're on very shifting, shaky ground here. And one of those things, as I mentioned in the introduction, was there was an involvement in pornography. So take us to that space, if you would. And again, we don't celebrate the sin, but again, we want to be real. So what age did you get involved with this? What was your how did you find your way into that world, and what was that first experience like for you?
Before I go into that, what you say right now, we don't celebrate the sin, but for me, it becomes easier to talk about all of this with every time I do it, because I have this image in my head that is the risen Christ. He resurrected with his scars. He didn't erase them. So scars are to be to give glory to the Lord, and and going in the past and just mentioning the story of each one of us is showing these scars that the Lord has healed. But the scar is a reminder that there's been victory over death.
Amen.
So around the age of 6 or 8 years old, I don't recall the exact age I had. I was exposed to pornography in the forms of Playboy magazines and video cassettes. It was in one of my aunt's house, and I think it was just like for a few occasions. We didn't have, I'm talking, this is the 70s, so there wasn't that much exposure, or that much access to pornography. But these video cassettes were enough to make a deep wound. To this day, I still remember some of those images. To this day, I still remember some of those pages I went through, and the impact they had was lasted for decades. So and this is very important to know. Nowadays, I accompany parents and children that have been exposed to pornography, and the impact is so severe, and it's so early that they have access nowadays, and the type of pornography is so much worse, so much more graphic, so much more 3D, so to speak, that I can't even imagine what the impact is going to be in their lives if they don't get help. And the urge that I make, the call that I make to parents to protect their children, and parents aren't, not all of them are aware of what big of a danger this is, and how hurtful and how destroyful it is, destroying. So yeah, around that age, and that I hadn't had any sexual education. All I knew was my youngest brother grew in my mom's tummy, and I had no idea why. At some point, I was told that dad put a seed in mommy's tummy, and that's it. I knew that. Oh, what I was told also was that babies came from dad and mom loving each other a lot. So I kind of started developing this confusion of I liked this kid in first grade, I remember, and I was so afraid of being pregnant because I really loved him. And now the fun part is that what was an innocent, being enamored, how do you say it? Yeah.
Enamored. We'll go there.
Enamored. At some point, my brain connected it with the pornography I saw. And then it started creating sexual fantasies at an age that I don't think it would have been natural to 6, 7, 9, 8 year old. So that, and after that, I wasn't that much exposed. I think the second big exposure I remember was when I was in my puberty years. Cable TV came to town, and there wasn't any restrictions. People weren't aware of this, and I'd sneak in at night and see some movies at the TV was actually in my boy siblings, my brother's room. They were younger, so I don't know if they were aware of this, but I'd sneak into the room and watch some movies. And that was just for a few occasions. But again, those images were enough to get imprinted in my head and affect me. And to this day, I still remember exactly what I saw.
Okay, let
how
me jump in here. Let me jump in. This is very important, and again, I obviously the conversation that we're sharing today. This is obviously not for little ears, so you may want to listen to this when you are by yourself or driving alone, or you've knocked them out with duct tape and Benadryl. That's a side note. That's a secret. So I'm kidding. Kind.
Dramamine.
Dramamine, yes, exactly. So, I want to start off here. You mentioned about the issue of scars, and I think that's a very important point that you raised here. Scars are a sign of healing. We often hear the misstated notion that person's going to be scarred for life. My response to that is, thank God if it's actually scars. Now, if it's wounds, that's a whole nother matter, right? And we especially on the Redeemed Vision podcast, especially in our work with freedom coaching, we deal a lot with wounds which are stemming from trauma in many cases, right? So those are things that need to be worked through here, and especially the other point is yes, you are 100% correct. The type of pornography from the 70s and even the 80s is not most of the stuff that these children are exposed to. Anyway, and for those who are unaware, it's anywhere between the ages of 8 and 11 years of age. And I have known personally of a 6-year-old who was counseling in Claudia, you yourself, which is seemingly rare, a 6-year-old girl being exposed to those magazines that are being laid around and are present, right? So and again, and this is a call to parents. You've got to be aware of it. That's again the documentary. For instance, start with that documentary. It's happening right here, as I mentioned at the start of this, to be able to become aware of this. It's not to freak out. You might have that moment to be proactive here. If you give a child a device without being aware of exactly what they are doing on the device, it is giving a gun without shooting lessons. Really critically important here. Okay, so I want to go back just really quick because this is really important because I want to. This may be able to put some dots, connect some dots for others who are hearing this, who have had pornography use and attachment in their life. Those original magazines, those original videos, Claudia. What was the attraction for you? What was the drive factor there? Because the notion that a lot of women that I've heard, right, historically has been, ew, they're dirty pictures, right? You, it was a different reaction, right? Something was planted there. So what was the attraction for you? How would you describe that?
What a good question. I think first, what drove me was curiosity, not knowing anything about sexuality. And I'm not saying parents should give all this information about sexuality, but we should plant appropriate sexual education from a very early age, where actually we give it sex educations from the womb, whether we're conscious or not, and how we perceive and transmit what we believe about each sex, how we receive each child. So if I connect this to my story also of not having this sense of belonging, not feeling accepted, affirmed, I think I recall, like, from the magazines, it was this notion of importance. These women in these magazines were giving like a whole page, and they're so beautiful. And yeah, they're naked, but this is what makes them important: their body, and this erotic glow, so to speak. I don't know how to say it, how to explain it. And then the videos were a bit more of this curiosity. And even though it was the 70s and it wasn't as bad as what we can find today, it still wasn't even like normal sex, if you know what I mean. So again, I think the being the protagonismo, how do you say that? Like,
I'm not sure. Keep going.
Protagonismo, like the first actor.
So for all those who are watching this, right, please put in the comments what the translation you think the translation. We'll play that game. Maybe there'll be a prize. So anyway, the protagonist, maybe.
What did
the protagonist? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, the protagonist. The protagonist.
All right, I win. I get the prize. You're welcome. All right.
the protagonism of the women being displayed in these videos. Because I don't recall the men, I recall the women. And it was this protagonism again. It's, you know, and if I link it to my stories, wow, being a woman is important. But it's important in this context of hypersexualization, of usage of the body, and just the body shape as well, you know, and just also I can link it also to the need of being loved by a man, because some of these things seemed romantic, you know. I'm being, if I put myself in the place of the woman I'm looking at in the video, it's like, oh, I'm there, I'm being important, I'm being loved, or at least touched by someone who is a man. And I didn't feel affirmation from either of my parents. So, and you mentioned something that's very important, and I'd like to clear this up, whether it's perceived or real, right? So I'm not gonna pinpoint the blame on anyone. For the brain, what happens, whether it's real or perceived, is real. So
it's real to that person.
It's real to the person. So for me, I wasn't affirmed, I wasn't accepted, and I wasn't loved by my parents, by either of them. I was just this lonely kid who saw other siblings come along who seemed to belong to the family, except for myself. So these women I used to see in the videos were important, were the center of attention, and were touched by others, especially by men. I think I very much longed for my father's embrace. I think that's
Mercy.
the connection I see there.
Yeah. No, those again. These are I like to describe as, you know, a genuine need, right, for healthy affirmation, to be affirmed as a daughter, to be told and received I am loved, for healthy touch and healthy attention from father and mother, right? If those genuine needs are not met, we're going to go at some level at some point in our life, we're going to go seeking them in other areas, right? And like the notion goes, if nature abhors a vacuum, and so if we're not getting that healthy there, we're going to go, as we like to say in our work, if we can't find the fresh water, we're going to go looking for the septic tank. And this is what met you here. And I would just also make just a clarification, so we're all on the same page. Pornography isn't sex at all. It's the complete opposite of what it is, right? And we would say in reality and in truth, it is a loving, united, lifelong union of husband and wife in that most intimate act, which is so intimate, it's too intimate ever to be displayed, that it's meant to be for that couple to enter in that moment, right? That shared experience that bonds them together, and then an explosion from that to potentially bring forth new human life, right? This is a great, profound gift.
Well, as John says, the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much, it's that it shows too little. There's no way you can depict by any means what actually happens between a husband and a wife. And as you said, it's not meant to be depicted. It's not meant to be shared. It's meant to be shared only amongst themselves and to the world through spiritual fertility and through kids, through biological fertility.
Amen. And then also thinking about this, right? If the counter messages are being programmed by our children, right? This is the next generation, right? How are they perceiving relationships? How are they perceiving parenting at all? It's a very skewed notion, and especially, as we say here in the work that we do, the guilt, shame, the self-hatred, the lack of identity. This causes a whole gamut of problems. So this leads us into the next question that I have for you, or a series of questions. So I say, what met, and you hit a little bit on this, but I'd like you to see if you can articulate a little more. So two parts. A, what messages did you receive from pornography? And I'm going to leave that open-ended, and you can apply it to any areas you'd like. And how did this affect your relationships with peers while you were growing up?
Okay. First of all, it hypersexualizes. It made me hypersexual.
Hypersexuality.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, one message was that it's okay for just anyone to touch me, especially in a sexual way. So that initial exposure to pornography rendered me vulnerable, and in the form of erotic play with a cousin in the same age, I suffered sexual abuse. Now, at the moment, I didn't realize it was sexual abuse. I was hypersexualized and aroused by the videos I had seen. I had all these images in my head and thinking that was romantic. So that would be another message, that romanticism has to do with the use of our bodies in the search for pleasure. So doing pretend play, that's when the erotic play came in, and it burdened me with this huge rock of guilt and sexual confusion. Okay, because when there's erotic play, there's this is something that a lot of people don't know, and that a lot of sexual abuse survivors are afraid to speak of or to acknowledge, is that since our bodies have erogenous zones, sometimes during sexual abuse we do feel pleasure, and the majority of sexual abuse doesn't happen in a violent way. And nowadays even more so, most of I work for my diocese in the topic of sexual abuse within the church, and the statistics, at least for my country, say that 80% of sexual abuse happens within the family, and of that, and about 90%, almost, I think, happens without violence. Okay, so you're talking about experiences where grooming happens. You're talking about experiences such as the one I had, where it's thought of having an element of asymmetry, like it's got to be an older person, an older kid. But a lot of sexual abuse is happening between peers because of pornography. And it is a phenomenon nowadays. It wasn't in the 70s, but I had that experience. So this sort of unconscious grooming, because of course my cousin was also a very hurt person, had received some types of abuse and a lot of neglect also. So you have this hurt kid just searching for something and hurting another kid as well. And of course, there's also some pleasure in this experience, in this erotic play. So this put a lot more confusion into my person, into my heart, into my what I perceived as my sexuality. I didn't even know what it was. And as you said, more of my identity, actually, because our identity is sexed. So everything that happens in the sexual realm affects our identity. It brought in vulnerability to other types of sexual abuse, like from other relatives, not violent, never violent, but nevertheless still abused. And also some sexual orientation confusion in my puberty years. And then later on, and I can explain that if we get to that point, if we have time.
Yeah. Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
Let me jump, because I think this is such an important point. We're made from love. This is the Christian perspective, right? In truth, we are made from love, to live in love, to experience love, and to go back from love, back to, right? That's that's the journey. That's the Christian journey, right? Everybody has there's obviously clearly nuances of that, but that's the overarching picture. In this place where we're supposed to experience love, especially from our direct parents and the extended siblings and cousins and things like that, they're supposed to be good, healthy, wholesome experiences. That includes touch, that includes words, all those things. It's supposed to be good and beautiful, right? We're supposed to experience that. Yes. When it's not there, right? When the absence is there, or should we say the perceived absence that becomes real to us, right? When not given love, we're going to go seek this out because we're thirsty for love. God has planted this into us, right? That ache is there, and it's supposed to be the real deal. And so, for you, this is it is your journey, certainly, but it's certainly not uncommon. And what we're finding here, and I think this is an important point that I want to make, that we want to communicate for parents. Claudia is expressing here the touch that she received, which was abuse, and she's identified that very, very. And I thank you for saying that very clearly here, because it is. If it's not an act of genuine self-gift, right, in the appropriate time, in the appropriate way, in a healthy relationship, which for sexual touches is reserved for marriage. That's the way God designed it, to protect the human persons in many ways. When we don't receive that, right, that colors our world. And whereas you were shown it was never a violent touch, the messages from current pornography, for a vast majority of stuff, because this has to do with the dopamine receptors. What was innocent images goes into the videos now, and it's not enough. We need more and more, especially with the dopamine. And we find that this is moving very much into the realm of violence, of rape, of horrendous things that we don't want to. I don't want to bring explicitly here on this podcast. And those messages, though, our children, because there is this perceived hole here that they have in their heart, if it gives any semblance, or they believe the semblance that this is going to get them to be liked, because there's a FOMO, fear of missing out, going to help me be included, and give some semblance of what they think love is, they're going to go for it. And the private viewing times, they don't just stay there. So this is where, especially, and again, obviously, we're not going into graphic detail by any means. This obviously affected into relationships growing up, getting into high school and college and beyond that. So how would you describe that for you?
Yeah, and you gave me the perfect platform to describe it, like an increasing, like a spiral. Even as I said, I didn't have much access to pornography, but even the fantasies that fueled, because I forgot to say this, after going through this, the first sexual abuse and exposure to pornography, somewhat at the same time, around the same time, I'm not sure what happened first, I can't recall, I developed a strong masturbation compulsion. Now, in the kindergarten years, preschoolers, it's a part of human development to explore genitals and discover that you can feel pleasure, as well as you can feel pleasure tugging on your hair or sucking on your thumb. It's just a natural discovery. But once I believe I had developed the compulsion as a coping mechanism for anxiety. But then at some point it united with the pornography. And as I said, at a very young age, I started having very strong, very clear, explicit sexual fantasies. And the same way that a person with a compulsion for pornography has to look at ever so darker or stronger or more not and I forgot the word, indigna, out of dignity, less human pornography.
Against your dignity, against contrary to human dignity.
Yeah. How it like with any drug, there has to be more, and it gets worse every time. in my head, these fantasies started getting worse with time. So I hit puberty, then I start going out with boys, and this is the only way I know how to receive any kind of touch, any kind of being held, any kind of feeling loved, caressed, So I developed relationships where a lot of use was there, a lot of sexual use, where I was second plate, like some would call them toxic relationships nowadays, but they weren't. They were actually nice guys, but they were hurt too. So I let myself be used in relationships. I also used boys in my relationships and now I know it was just to get this sense of belonging, of being held, of being embraced, of being accepted. But every relationship left me with bigger wounds, with depression, with bigger doubts about myself, bigger insecurities. Even though on the outside I was this overachieving kid, straight A's, leader of the class, multi-talented, etc., etc., etc. On the inside, I felt I was rotting. I was always rotting.
Mm. Oh, painful. Very, very painful here, and thank you for sharing that. And I think this is just an important takeaway for all of those who are hearing this, especially parents. The understood appropriate. Let's define some terms. We're talking about it's critical that you give your children a healthy sexual formation. And when we say sexual formation, we don't mean techniques about sexual activity. That's what the world wants to teach. That stuff, by the way, of healthy that's healthy sexual activity within marriage, they'll figure it out, right? God will help them with that, and there are ways in which, when that time comes, right, when we're developed, that's not education at all. It's something that will steal innocence, and our purity is our power. So when we say healthy sexual formation, who are you, a male or a female? Two sexes, only two sexes. Who are you in the sight of God? And obviously developing that relationship with God, developing their confidence, developing their own talents and strengths, and especially developing virtue, which is critical. These are much more important things, so that when the time comes, if they're called to this great vocation, which we call marriage, they're going to be able to bring something, a myriad, a world of strengths to the table, of value to that, so those relationships can flourish. Anything, these unchaste behaviors will steal that from us. Both Claudia and I know this intimately and personally in there, right? And so obviously you mentioned just of being destroyed inside, and that pain that is very much in there, and toxic relationships that are in there. And because we're I want to make sure we get in the full discussion here. Where would you say was the hitting for you? What was rock bottom for you?
Rock bottom was the last boyfriend before my now husband, in which I had this huge rock of guilt, as I said, and I still carried it with me, and it was bigger by the moment. My compulsion was getting worse. Sometimes it stopped me from studying. It stopped me from doing sports. It was just really dominating my day, my time. And then this boy left, broke up with me in a way that he was a nice guy, but I had lied to myself. I had fantasized a reality that wasn't there. And when we broke up, the reality that hit me right in the face is that I am just a thing. I am just someone to try to have sex with, and if I don't comply, then I'm not lovable. That was my rock bottom. I went into a depression that no one noticed. I had physical symptoms also, so it just seemed like I was sick. I had a fever and everything, but I think that was like the first time I really had a big, deep in depression. But yeah, that was a reality that hit me, that I'm just someone to use, and when I'm not useful anymore, they're done with me. And that's what I felt at home too. I'm useful for some things, but I'm not lovable just as I am.
Yeah, that's a super painful place to be. And this is, again, given the world we live in currently, this is the message that many people, I'm valued for what I do, not for who I am. Right. And I think some other takeaways from what you shared, and thank you for being vulnerable here with us. Right. The phrase we can say, what people want is fantasy, what they need is reality. They need to wake up. That was a place where you came in here, and the phrase that we've talked offline, especially in the work that you do with our female clients, right, is that notion of feeling that I'm just a body. I'm just here. I'm a stand-in. I'm a model that can be used for this moment and then discarded here. But every single person on the planet is unique and unrepeatable. And no one wants to be seen as something that is simply used and then traded in for a quote unquote better model. We're not automobiles. We are human beings. And when the law of the gift, what we like to say, gets violated, real people get hurt. And so, Claudia, you were obviously in that space for a while. Can you share briefly, what would you say helped bring about your own transformation and freedom, especially from this compulsion, but also these toxic relationships?
Jesus.
Okay, cheater. Can you be more specific?
That's true.
How did Jesus play into this?
When the good thing
yes,
is,
Jesus is the answer, but it's not going to get you through every test, and it's not going to get you through every test on this. I want to push in here. So how did Jesus play into all this?
Well, the good thing about hitting rock bottom is that there's no other way to go than up. Yeah. And also that I had, at least I kind of knew I had to look for a lifeboat because I was drowning. And I was invited to a lay movement in the church, Regnum Christi. And the first retreat there, I encountered Jesus. What else can I say? That was like the first turning point conversion in my life, because, well, Christian life is about many conversions, right? So that was like the first one, and it didn't have anything to do with changing or being someone else. It had to do with realizing that Jesus was real, that he loved me, and that he wanted to make my dreams come true. So I started dreaming about having a family, about having children. I wanted 8 children. We have 5 and 1 in heaven. He has fulfilled all of the dreams he instilled in my heart. Finding a man who loved him as well. And I started dreaming about this family that I wanted, and that started forming the woman I wanted to be, for that family I was dreaming, for that happiness I knew that was accessible to me because of Christ. He let me know that. So then I started this path of formation and conversion, and I had like I developed like this idea of what kind of man I need for this project, and it was just 3 basic. I said, okay, I'm not gonna be like a long list, just that he follows Christ. So all I'm gonna expect is that at least he goes to mass on Sundays, because it was hard at the moment. I thought it was gonna be really hard to find a guy who went to mass, because I used to dance on the tables before that at the bars. So I don't think I was gonna find someone who was looking to go to mass with me, at that point. Someone who was hardworking, because we needed to have a lot of, we were going to have, and that he was open to having a big family, at least open to. If we couldn't, then we might adopt, and all these thoughts in my head. And all of a sudden I met him at a church. His parents and my parents were in the couples group, and they had this luncheon, and we met there. And I wasn't really attracted to this guy, but he mentioned he was the only one a bit older than I at the meeting, and he mentioned that he had been to a retreat recently. And I thought, wow, there's a guy who goes to retreats. So even if and this is what I really thought this, and he knows it, even if he's ugly, if he asks me out, I'm gonna say yes. And he asked me out. Of course, a month later, I thought he was the handsomest guy in the world and the most attractive. And at first, I started going back to my initial behaviors in relationships, because that's all I knew. And here's the other turning point. He stopped me, and he said,
Praise God.
He has a whole other story also that you should hear it once, of hurt, also sexual brokenness also. But he had converted, and he was coming from that place, and he stopped me and he said, I want you for something serious. I want you for life, if you're willing to try out this being boyfriend and girlfriend, this relationship. I'm not going to use you. And that blew me away. For the first time ever, a man let me know that I was valuable just because I was. That I was worth the wait. That I was worth cherishing. I was worth being pursued. And that was the starting point of my healing from the compulsion. At some point in our dating relationship, we opened up our wounds. Actually, very early on, we were just both so pushed by the Spirit. I think, because it's not normal. I don't think it's very common that only 1 month or 2 months into dating you open up all your wounds, right? So it was like, okay, this is who I am. This is my story. This is what I'm dealing with right now, this compulsion, and it's destroying me. And he vowed to help me out. He helped me out with my hypersexualite behavior by being chaste. He helped me out with my compulsion by praying the rosary together. His chastity healed my unchastity.
Oh, that's a tagline. That's a T-shirt right there. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And
I love it.
And then I started seeing myself in a different light.
Awesome. What was like? I have commentary on that. Well, actually, here I'll comment here, and then I'll ask a question, a follow-up question. The image that is radiating through my head right now is the woman at the well, right? John 4, and that notion, right? You had been looking for love in so many places, in too many faces, right? And the bridegroom comes to meet you, right? Who was first? It's Jesus, right? And I would say to anyone who is, to all my single brothers and sisters who may be hearing this, right? And you're looking for love, and that desire and that pursuit for love is a beautiful thing. God has planted it in there, but it's only if it's real love will it satisfy. But you must first be wooed by the bridegroom, Jesus Christ, who knows you more than anything, right? Those wounds, and I think, Claudia, that's a beautiful testament, right? And again, please do not just emotionally vomit on your first date, folks. Okay, don't do that. Okay, Claudia didn't do that. They waited until month 2, then started. Okay, we got to get real here. Getting spiritually naked here and opening up here, because the possibility of I do forever on this planet was this is not just light talk. So we're going to open that up here, right? And it has to obviously be slow unveiling. And I think you demonstrated that, and it was the love of your human bridegroom, right? And a man who is striving for possession of himself. And I speak this, let me punch the gentleman in the face. You must take the lead. Must ask out. He did. Like your husband, I would love to meet him. Like I've never done that. I've never gotten to have a chat with him.
Oh, you would love him. He's like the most boy, like you guys in the team. And it's not that he was, and I want to make this clear. It wasn't that he didn't have any sexual impulse or attraction for me. It's exactly what you said. He came from such a broken place, sexual brokenness in his past, having gone through his conversion, and he was this man. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was this man mastering himself, integrating his sexuality into his manhood. And that's what led me into the possibility. It was like the opposite of Adam and Eve. It's like me being Eve and saying, wow, this is what I needed. This is reflecting myself into him. Then I know who I am. Now I know who I am. And since he was already in this relationship with Jesus, of course it was Jesus that was ministering to me through him. Jesus, and he continues throughout our marriage. We've been through so many things, and Jesus continues to minister to me through him. And I try to be also his human Jesus. I try to be as connected to Jesus as well, because I realized once I encountered theology of the body, I realized that's what the mystical body of Christ is also in the marriage. In marriage, we are each other's Jesus mystical body, and we are there to love, kiss, and wrap up Jesus's wounds, and in turn, Jesus ministers us from the cross of this imperfect person.
Yes.
Through his own body, through his mystical body, I am loving Jesus in my husband, and husband is in my husband, and Jesus is loving me through my husband. But that started in a chaste dating relationship. That's where it started, and that's why this opening of the wounds was possible. I only know it now. Going back, at the moment, I didn't know we were being led through such a beautiful path, such a powerfully healing path. And also, I want to make a note on how this was the real intimacy. Just being able to open up our hearts and all of our wounds. That was the real intimacy, not what I had before, not what I had experienced before, that I confused for intimacy. And that's where the lies come.
Amen.
Okay, so sexual union is meant to take us to communion, to profound intimacy in marriage. But when we take it away from marriage, it doesn't lead to intimacy. It leads to hurt
and destruction in many ways. And so, and I think such an important thing here. And I want to give you a compliment, Claudia. Thank you for the way in which you are honoring your husband, right? You're putting him on a pedestal, but a realistic pedestal, right? He has his own wounds. He's not a perfect guy.
He has 1,000 defects.
Exactly. But can we see the good in that person, and especially in our marriage? And I think this is, I'll speak this to anyone listening to this who is or seeing this who's married yourself, right? And because it can be very easy to draw out the negative, especially if we've experienced the brokenness in that relationship, especially if there has been sexual brokenness between the two in the couple there. And you're a testament here, and thank God you're here and sharing this today of the power of redemption. And then obviously it's first that Christ, the bridegroom, who leads the redemption and coming in here. And then it also speaks the language, again, we don't have too much time to get into this, but the power of the sacrament of marriage, of being able to heal, to perfect, and to elevate, or heal, elevate, and perfect into very beautiful things. So for the remaining time in the interview, I want to draw into this, right? It's usually our greatest wounds and our hurts that lead our flipping them around, getting those healed allows us to be wounded healers for others. So you've been doing work in 20 years. You now have joined this ragtag band we call freedom coaching, right? Yes, you might have a mental health defect doing that, but we'll let it slide here, right? Can you share maybe one or two testimonies again of especially with women, because we want to highlight, especially this is where the power of your testimony is, of women who have struggled with pornography or struggled with the unchaste behavior, of working with them. What has that relationship done, and what transformations have you had? Just one or two small testimonies. What would you say to that?
I think one of the main things is how pornography hurts a woman's self-image.
God bless you. See, we're very real on the podcast here. So there you go.
Sorry about that. There's a lot of, I mean, I know it hurts men too, self-image, but it puts a woman in a double position of vulnerability, because on one part is the body shaming issue, like not feeling pretty enough, not feeling voluptuous enough, not being sexy enough. And we see this I see this in the workshops I give sometimes at schools, even with very young girls. Instead of wanting to be pretty, they want to be sexy. Now, pretty is equalized to being sexy. Hypersexualized behaviors, all of that. And then there's a second vulnerability. The effect on pornography is on how we start to actually see ourselves as objects, as mere objects, and conceiving relationships as an exchange of what I give as an object and what I might receive as affirmation. A woman's heart is always looking for this affirmation. The way a woman relates in sexuality is to give love and receive love, to give myself and receive that love. But it dissociates, and so now I'm just giving my body and I think I'm receiving love, but I'm not. I think that's like two of the main things I've seen, or main
Sure.
I don't know how to.
So very important distinctions, really important, and that recognition. And again, I encourage, especially the young ladies who are listening to this, right, to be real with oneself, to go before God, to get spiritually naked there, to bury your heart there, and see where those things may have come up in any of the ways which we may have misused our sexuality, and see where those falls into those, shall we say, those two general camps there. Realize these things don't just go away. We've got to work through them. So from there, I want to ask, can you share one or two testimonies of working with the young lady and seeing, after working with you and going through a process of healing, what's been the outcome from that? How have their lives been changed?
Oh my God. Well, there's this one that is just so amazing. There's so many wrong relationships in her past, searching for this affirmation. I can actually relate a lot to her story. searching for this, affirmation in the wrong place, and being hurt and hurt and hurt all over. And through the process of freedom coaching, there's been so much liberation of the wrong beliefs she came to form about herself, from being at the main theme is in her trauma history, in her wounds, is I'm just an object to be used, and if I don't comply, or if I don't deliver what men are expecting from me, then I'm not good enough. It's always this, I must be what I think pornography is telling me to be. In to sum it up, like these beliefs about what a woman should be and act like and give in sexual terms in order to be at least likable, and there was so much hurt from that, and just having a complete turnaround into realizing her worth, her just, oh my God, and just a part of the emotions for women. More so, we're so much more connected with our emotions, and it's part of our daily life, and it's just a big part of our human experience. I mean, for men it is as well, but we are always thinking about the emotions and talking about emotions. Our two brains are much more connected, and just realizing that God actually cares about her emotions, that Jesus wants to hear them and affirm them, and they're important for God. That was such a beautiful fruit of this process. And just I don't know, I'm talking all over the place, but I wasn't expecting this question, as you can tell. But it's just amazing to see the change, even in the face, even in just the language. And there's another client that her whole face, her face used to be so expressionless, so sad, and now every time we meet is a big smile, a big realization of her worth. And then you start seeing also fruits in other areas of their lives. That's been amazing. How really in this work we can see in what we do at Freedom Coaching, we're able to testify how we are really integral beings, body and soul. And what you do for your body, you do for your soul, and what you do for your soul, you're doing for your body as well. So we're working with sexual compulsions, but the fruits start to grow also towards other areas of their lives. And everything starts to connect and to come into order, and to make sense, and to give a purpose for the life and for the relationship with God as well. I don't know, I'm sorry, but I could speak of this 10 more minutes.
No,
amazing.
It's beautiful.
I don't know if I responded to your question.
No, what you're sharing here is obviously this is the fruit that comes when we start to be honest, when we start to show a little bit of humility and realizing I don't have it all together, or as I like to say, I'm not okay, you're not okay, it's okay. Can we talk about this? Can we enter into a safe space to be able to bring this out? And what just a little bit you've shared here, and without going into specific details, right? We're seeing literally, because the body expresses the person. This is the truth here. Whereas pornography, unchaste behavior, tries to separate the body from the person here. In this work, even just establishing healthy relationships begins to reintegrate us, right? Is it a challenging process? Oh, it is a challenging process, because we've got to get real. And a lot of people, as we said, like to stay in the fantasy. But it's when we start to front reality and go to a place where we're going to be heard, we're going to be respected, we're going to be loved. That's very attractive. And so, Claudia, in the very little bit that time that I hear, we've begun a very beautiful relationship, right? Professional relationship. And I'm grateful for the work that you're doing with clients in there. And I'd like to I want to, in this section of our interview, I want to have you answer one final question, right? To those who are hearing this and wondering, is this really possible, right? Why should I open this space up? Can I just go ignore this part of my life? Why is living in freedom worth it? What would you say to them?
Oh my God. I don't know. Do you want to be happy? That sums it up for me. It's the possibilities. It's the being happy despite anything, knowing who you are, knowing who you are, just knowing who you are. I I don't know if it makes sense, but
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to be enslaved to these compulsions, to these wounds. And it's all the same at the end. A compulsion feeds off a wound, and the wound deepens with the compulsion. It's just such a negative cycle. And I know that when we're there, it seems impossible or even out of the point to even try to get out of there. But I tell you, I was there for 16 years. I suffered much, and you don't need to hit rock bottoms like some of us had to try and see up above the ground. It's like when you're going to go up a hill, and if it's full of fog, or there's too many trees, you can't see the scenery, you can't see the view. But once you start going up the hill, it becomes more clear, and then once you're on top, you can see the whole view. So why not try it? I mean, if you want to be happy, if you don't, well, you can stay in the hole.
Well,
I know
and we like to.
difficult, but that's why I want to help other people, to let them know there's hope, that it's possible. If I'm 52 now, and I'm letting you know, I'm telling you it's possible. If you don't believe an old lady like I want to give hope. And there's many of us that have gone through this, and with God's help and with our friends, this is what a coaching relationship is. It's a friend that is walking with you. And Jesus, that's what he invited us to. And he said, when two or more people unite in my name, I'll be there. And this is what we trust in. So I just ask for a leap of faith, a small leap.
Amen. Small, and guess what? You're going to be met. It's not an empty. You're going to be met there in open arms. It's good. It's beautiful. So Claudia, thank you so much for sharing. So now we go on to something very different, and Claudia is a little different from a lot of our coaches, clients here. Different guests here on the Redeem Vision podcast. Yes, she's a coach with Freedom Coaching. She also has listened to the end of most of these podcasts, but I've asked her to not overthink this. Try to as best she can. I know that she's a woman, so I'll probably ask an impossible question to kind of clear the slate in that beautiful mind of yours, and to receive this as we enter into the 12. You clearly know what this are, so I'm just going to ask, are you ready?
No.
She's taking a drink of vodka. Is it vodka or is it water?
No,
I'm not sure.
it's water.
All right, it's water. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Peanut butter, creamy or country?
Crunchy. That's the only one I already had the answer to.
Okay, good. We'll leave it there. Number 2, if you could be any Star Wars character, who would you be?
I forgot about that one. I don't know why, but Chewbacca came to mind.
Okay, fair enough.
I find it so liberating. I find his ability to growl and just be who he is so liberating.
Do you have one of the Chewbacca masks?
I don't.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you have to look it up. Look up the one with the Chewbacca mask from years ago. Go look it up and laugh your butt off. You're welcome. Okay. I'll get it to you. Number 3. What is your desert island food?
Nuts, but a mixture. It has to be cashews with almonds and peanuts.
Ooh, those are good. I'll take that. Number 4, beer or wine?
Wine.
What kind?
Wine all the time.
It doesn't matter what kind?
No, red. Red wine.
Red wine. Okay, good. Well, the little
Doesn't matter if it's
UB40
screw-on bottles. It doesn't matter if it's a box. Red wine.
box red wine. There you go. A little UB40 red wine. Number 5. What is your most memorable Christmas gift you received growing up?
Oh, I know that one because we mentioned it in a meeting. The little, I forgot the name. The little oven. The little oven.
Oh, the easy bake ovens. That's right.
Oven. Easy bake oven. Great memories.
What was your favorite thing? What would you make? Like, what's one of the things you made in that?
Chocolate cake. We made cakes mainly because the one we got, it was for my sister and I, and it had these little cake molds. So we made cakes and cakes and cakes. I think once we did a brownie, but the cakes were the best. Yeah. And they actually came out good. We were really good. They weren't bricks like Chris said.
Maybe you'll have to make some and send them to him. So yes. That's Chris Ricketts we're speaking about, one of our other coaches. Number 6, what is your bucket list city or country?
I would love to someday get to know all of Italy. I know a couple of about 3 cities, but I would love to get to know every city.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. You might have to move there. Just a thought. Number 7. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Fly. I always dream, especially in my younger years. I would always dream that I could fly away from trouble. Like in all of my nightmares, I fly away. But I fly swimming. Like I have to run and then give a little jump, and then I start swimming, like actually with my legs, kicking and then swimming in the air.
All I see is Peter Pan flying. That's all I've got going on here. You in tights and Peter Pan. So there we go. Whoever the woman was who played Peter Pan on Broadway, that's you. So, all right. Number 8. Have you seen The Chosen?
Of course.
Okay. Impossible question. What's your favorite episode so far?
Okay, I haven't seen the third session, so I'm
third
behind.
Season.
Third season. I mean, my favorite what? Scene or character?
Your the impossible question. What's your favorite episode?
Episode. Yeah, it's impossible.
I told you.
Oh, there's 2 that I always remember. One is when I don't know why, but it doesn't involve Jesus actually. It's when the rabbi tries to exorcise Mary Magdalene.
Episode 1.
He can't. That episode struck me really strong, but that part of the episode. And the other one is when he's playing with kids. I think it's when they were walking towards the holy city, like right at the end of
Beautiful.
the Easter.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I do recommend, Claudia, continue your journey. Season 3 is definitely worth watching. I'll leave it at that. No spoilers. Number 9, besides your name and date, what do you want written on your tombstone?
I really, really hope I earn that it says she loved.
Beautiful. Number 10, if you had to pick a favorite saint, only one, who would it be?
Oh my God, only one. Well, I do have one, not because I picked her, but because she how do you say when someone is behind you all the time?
They're stalking you?
Yeah, she stalked me. She stalked me. Saint Philomena. She stalked me till I took her devotion up. So she is
beautiful.
My favorite.
Just a side note to all those listening to this, Philomena is a very powerful intercessor, but I've heard rumors that if you like make a promise to her, you better come through, or she gets a little snippety. That's just that's what I've heard on that level. So I'm glad you have that devotion. She is a very powerful intercessor. We'll leave it there.
She is.
Number 11. If you were to be martyred, how would you like to go out?
A quick slit on the throat.
Quick slit, and you're going out. There you go. Got it. And number 12, Claudia, why be Catholic?
Do you want to be happy?
Freedom.
I don't have another question. I don't have another response. Because I'm
good.
Catholic.
No.
That's where I found my worth, my purpose, my meaning, and the one bridegroom that loves me and shall ever love me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Claudia, you're off the hot seat. Congratulations. It's been an honor to have you on the Redeemed Vision podcast. I'm delighted to have you as a guest here, but especially as a member of the team. You add so much value, and you also help to keep all the other boys in line as well. So we're grateful for that. Along with another very important woman who will go unnamed at this moment. But I encourage all of you to take in what was shared here on the podcast. And Claudia, thank you for who you are, for what you do, for the heart that you bring in all things. And I encourage you, if you want to get to know Claudia more, if you're feeling moved, then maybe I need to seek healing here, and you're a young woman or not so young, it doesn't matter. We encourage you to drop us a line, and we'll put you in touch with Claudia. She'd be happy to receive you. So Claudia, thank you so much, and God bless. We'll talk very soon. And for all of you who have witnessed this episode, we want to thank you very much for the honor. We ask you to please share this podcast, get the word out, and especially this is incredibly important, especially for women who are experiencing a brokenness in their own sexuality. There is hope, there is healing. And so may everything we do give glory to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Remember, nothing is wasted, and everything is redeemable. Until next time, I'm Steve Pokorny on the Redeemed Vision podcast. God bless.
The Redeemed Vision podcast is an outreach of Freedom Coaching. To learn more, check out freedom-coaching.net and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and MeWe.